coming at you. Good Tuesday, everybody. Mark Jeffries here along with Matthew. This is BTL, where we're going to talk bass fishing and anything else that we want to talk about. Yes, a special show with FLW Touring Professional Bradley Hallman in studio. And Bradley, thanks for coming in last minute, but we really appreciate it.
Super excited to be here, guys, as always.
Well, here's the deal, all right? We made arrangements with Joe at FLW.
Joe Opiger, the media relations coordinator.
Yes. They are working with us. Very, very fortunate to be able to coordinate some stuff. And the winner was scheduled to be on today. Well, until, what was it, day 3 or day 4 got postponed and moved to Monday. That kind of threw the scheduling off. So the ultimate winner, Terry Bolton, is actually doing day 5 today, of which you've been involved with before with your victory. So we were unable to get Terry on today. We're going to try and get Terry on next week. Yes, sir.
Joe texted me last night. He said, "Hey, Matt, I texted Mark, but he hasn't responded yet. Don't know if Bolton will be available tomorrow. Apologize for any inconvenience. I can have an emergency backup if necessary." I said, "Dude, you don't need to apologize." I said, "Jeffries is probably coaching and yelling at freshman basketball players."
I was.
We figured he'd be doing day 5, so we're having Hallman in studio. He said, "Right on."
What time was that? What time was that?
7:30.
Yeah, I texted him once I got
Was that
back.
an accurate assessment on my part?
100%. 100%. So we're going to have Bradley kind of break down Sam Rayburn, a different Sam Rayburn, Brad, and we'll get into some of the floodedness of this body of water. What's funny is, Brad, I can remember 20 years ago, and we're going to get into this because I've got some other stuff to cover first before we really dive into it. But do you remember that stage that Sam Rayburn went through where it was like down 15 feet? I mean, it looked like the desert on the bank because it was down so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
So a very, very different looking. Also, a lot of locals, a lot of HFAs really struggled this week. So I want to get your take on that. And then talk about fuzzy math. We need to talk a little bit about fuzzy math, don't we?
Yeah, Oklahoma math.
All right. The other thing is, on the instant feedback, if you have any questions about Sam Rayburn and some of the stuff that went down at Sam Rayburn, please go ahead. Give us your questions on the instant feedback, and Bradley will do his best to answer it. All right, Matthew, first thing. We have to mention the first major event of the year was what?
The first major event of the year?
Yeah, first big tournament event.
The FLW Tour on Rayburn.
No, it was the Costa.
Right.
Okay, but the second event, which was taking place that a lot of people may not know about, was out on the West Coast.
The Arizona Open.
The Arizona Open. And we failed to mention the guy that got it done in the Arizona Open had a tremendous outing on Lake Havasu. Yeah. They had like 70 boats.
75 plus.
Yeah, and they caught some fish out there, but Todd Woods got it done.
Big Daddy.
Big Daddy.
The original Big Daddy
Woods. He had like 23 something of smallmouth one day, did he not?
Yeah.
Almost 24. That's almost a 5-pound average, and really kind of took a stranglehold on it and didn't relinquish it. And there were, like Rojas fished it, Josh Bertrand fished it, Roy Hawk fished it.
Yeah.
Like all the guys fished it.
Here's a cool side story to the event that took place out there. You know, he fished his final day, or his final AAA was a victim of the Paradise Fire. All right, the catastrophe that happened out there with all the wildfires. Wow. And what Big Daddy did is right there, he gave his co-angler $1,000. He said, "It's not much." He said, "But here's $1,000. Hopefully you can use this $1,000. Obviously, with insurance, is going to cover some of it. But to do that right there on stage, give the guy $1,000, nothing but class. Yeah, nothing but class. So
that's awesome.
Obviously, a really, really good side note to his victory out at Lake Havasu. So very cool stuff, Matthew.
Yeah,
I have a question about that. Do
Yeah.
they still call that the U.S. Open also?
No, the
it's,
Arizona Open.
Oh,
It's
it's
called
like
the
a
Arizona
series.
Open.
Yeah. I know Carol Martin's fished it. Dean Rojas' son, Austin, the little machine, he fished it
Bertrand.
on the triple. I'm talking about the AAA side.
Oh, okay.
Because it's that combined weight deal again. You know,
I saw a lot of the guys where they were posting on their Instagram stuff and saw where Todd was leading after day one, and then I lost track of them. But awesome job, man! Congratulations to Todd Woods.
If you had free time, you'd go out and fish all that West Coast one bass stuff, wouldn't you?
Look at it, man. They got palm trees and stuff around and all the pictures and the weather. You know, they're talking about it's cold and they're in a sweatshirt. And I'm thinking, dude, yeah. I love it out there, man.
It is.
You did good, too.
Yeah, it's a great place. It's a great group of guys. It's almost like they're almost like a Alabama gang or like the Texas bunch, you know. But they're it takes a bigger area to make up that group of guys. But they're all really close and tight knit.
Having fished out there a little bit now, you've traveled out there some, and then you fished the U.S. Open. Can you see why there's such a contingent of West Coast grown-up guys who do well coast to coast on the national level?
They have a very large combination pool of styles of fisheries to pull from. You know, just like Havasu being the way it is, Meade, and then, you know, the extremes of the Delta. They're just total opposites. They've got grass, they've got clear water. They have a lot to learn from.
All right. Man, did you see, and Matt, Brad, he gets on to me about this, but I got to mention it. Did you see the weather forecast for Saturday for the AFC Championship game in Kansas City?
Well, I haven't seen Kansas City's forecast, but I've seen ours, and I imagine it's just a little bit worse, so a lot of snow and ice. Yeah,
it's supposed to be just gnarly. I mean, they're talking about comparisons to the Ice Bowl that took place in Green Bay back in the 60s with the Cowboys.
Not a great combination for a high-powered offense.
No. So it's going to be very interesting. Matt doesn't like the weather talk.
No, I do.
Sorry.
I just like how you go Armageddon every time that there's the potential for some weather.
That's how we roll here.
You go Armageddon.
This one's going to be legit, I think.
I think so. Just from a cold standpoint. You know what it's like fishing in the cold? Is there anything worse than fishing when it's like 24 degrees, sleet, maybe a few snowflakes mixed in there, wind blowing 20 miles an hour?
Not for me personally. It's 120 and guys are complaining. I love it, but when it's cold, I'm the first one crying.
What's the worst weather tournament that you've ever fished? Is there one that sticks out?
Oh, yeah.
What was that?
It was a BASS Open on Lake Louisville, and the last day going into it, and I was leading the event, final 10 guys, and it was in January. And Louisville's just north of Dallas, so it's really not that far south in Texas. And it was the coldest day of the winter. The front came through on that day. The wind blew 40 miles an hour. It was insane. I mean, ice on rods. And, of course, I'd been catching my fish 6 inches deep, and they wanted nothing to do with it. And I zeroed the last day. And ended up losing the event by 3 ounces without even weighing a fish. It was a hard thing and it was just so brutal cold. It was terrible.
Yeah. Hey, one more topic, and then we're going to take a break and come back and really dive into Rayburn. But what are your thoughts about Kyler Murray declaring for the NFL?
I think that obviously his heart's always been in football. If you really look at him and watch what he's done and his dad and who he's looked up to in his life, football is definitely his first love. Baseball has just kind of come natural to him. The young man's obviously got a lot of opportunities in life in front of him. I don't think that baseball's just out of the question right now either. Do you? I mean, he's going to make himself eligible for the NFL draft, and then, I heard that he had to pay back the money was what the news was saying this morning, but then someone else chimed in and said, well, if he shows up for spring training, then he gets to keep his signing bonus.
Yeah.
I don't think at this point in his life he's too worried about the money. It's more about what, he's
got options.
He's got things he would like to accomplish.
Yeah. Hey, we have a lot of Alabama listeners, obviously, with the wager that I had for this right here. I don't know if you heard or not. I took Oklahoma in the points and ended up winning a Vixen. Anyway, there have been no pictures. He's cracking
you got the
up.
Alabama hat there still?
It's in the box over here. I'll show it to you later.
The guy said I'm a Vixen at Alabama hat, and the package was wrapped with Roll Tide and elephants.
It's pretty funny. The whole Jalen Hertz situation, there hasn't been a picture of him being in Norman, but supposedly through my reliable sources that, yes, he was here in Norman. I don't know, dude.
Yeah, well, our reliable sources also told us that their defensive coordinator was coming here also.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. We'll see. All right. It really, really good stuff. And good timing on the whole Kyler Murray situation, because you know what the next 30 for 30 that's coming out is?
No.
Deion Sanders.
Oh, awesome.
They're going to go through his whole process of playing both. Obviously, one of the first people was Bo Jackson that did both. But I can't wait for the 30 for 30 on Deion Sanders. Should be a good one.
Absolutely.
All right. What do you have planned this weekend, Matthew? Are you fishing this weekend in the frigid temps?
I'm supposed to. I mean, they have a tendency to cancel them when it gets that cold.
Yeah.
And if there's ice there. So we'll see.
All right. All right.
I mean, I'm not going to go out there if it's 10 degrees and it's canceled.
All right.
But if it's still on, I've already paid my entry fee for one of them.
All right. Wise choice. Wise choice. All right. Coming back after this break, going to dive into Sam Rayburn with Brad Hallman. Everybody stay tuned.
Sleek new design with easy control file. The clearest images underwater with uncompromising range. Live mapping from the touchscreen. View notifications, video, even Google Maps on screen. And for the first time ever, real-time view of fish movements with live sight sonar. HDS Live. New from Lowrance.
It's about the hours spent getting everything just right. It's the attention to detail. Good just isn't good enough. It's the years spent on the water day after day. When you tie on a bait by Strike King, you're standing on the shoulders of legends.
Pros depend on hydraulic jack plates to get the best out of their boats. Do what they do. Demand Atlas performance. Atlas gets you from the bottom to the top in less than 8 seconds, even with the big 4 strokes. And when you gotta turn right around and get that heavy load back up in rough water, Atlas's innovative design and American-made components will get you there with confidence.
I'm at Depot. Just look for yourself. There's an Atlas jack plate on just about every professional's boat.
The Atlas hydraulic jack plate. You can depend on it.
Hey guys, Aaron Martins here. I'm going to be telling you about a new product by Sunline. It's Siglon PE x8. I've been using it almost extensively all year for my frogging, flipping, drop shotting, shaky heading, worming, jerk baiting. It's by far my favorite Sunline braid. I honestly, I don't say this unless I think it's true, but honestly it's the best braid in the market out of any of the braids. Definitely check it out. a price point line, $14.95 for 165 yards, and that could last you a whole year, just one spool with using leader material. It's Siglon PE x8. It's my favorite braid, and I think if you use it, it'll be your favorite braid too.
All right, we are back on a Tuesday. Special guest today, Brad Hallman in studio. And we're going to dive into what went down at Sam Rayburn now with Bradley. And where'd you finish, Bradley?
I finished 85th, right dead smack in the middle of 170.
All right, well, let's jump right into it. What was your plan going into it? Obviously, the big element was it was massively flooded.
Yep.
So what was your game plan going into it?
I'd gone down there and pre-practiced, and the lake was probably 3 to 4 foot high and was continuing to rise before the cutoff. And so we all had a pretty good idea that we were going to be fishing flooded conditions, and then the question was going to be, are they going to be in the bushes and the trees, or is it going to be an offshore deal? With it being wintertime in January and the water temperatures being in the 50s, even though the weather was warm, for the most part, it ended up being what we thought it would be, which is outside of the bushes. The techniques that we were going to use were definitely going to have to be deeper. So like the typical rattle trap and bite like that what you normally see, traditionally on Rayburn, was going to be difficult to play because just the simple fact of depth.
Right.
So the fish were going to be in a lot of the same types of areas and places, but they were going to be 10 to 14 foot deep instead of being 5 to 8 foot deep, basically. And that's pretty much what went down. You saw the deeper diving crankbaits take place at the rattle trap. The Carolina rig plays all the time and still played this week. Help me here. Oh, spinnerbait, the 3/4 ounce and 1 ounce spinnerbait. The guys were casting them out, letting them fall to the bottom, hitting it, getting the blades turning, and then just slow rolling the blade through the grass. Maybe some of the unforeseen was just how tight the groups were. Those fish that the guys that were at the top were capitalizing on were groups of large females, and the groups of fish were in very tight areas and very tight windows, and some of them suspended. You heard guys talking about changing crankbait depths. Bolton went from the 10 to the 14 or the 14 to the 10 and was able to catch some fish. I think Chad Warren talked about it yesterday on live a little bit, some of the fish being a little higher. So they were relating to bare spots on edges of grass, whether it be the edge of the hay grass or the inside edge of the hydrilla, to that bare spot, and that bare spot was what the fish were on.
So how do you find that?
It was a needle in a haystack, and to be honest, that's what happened with a lot of the local guys that were really big favorites going into the deal. The bare spots that they normally sit on were not the spots that these fish got. These fish got in places that were not traditional spots for them to be on. With that being said, they were also in the same areas, though. I mean, you still saw, we talked about this earlier.
Yeah.
I mean, you still saw Veach Basin, you saw Deer Stand, you saw canyons. You saw all the same areas play. So it wasn't like a new part of the lake lit up. It was still the same traditional areas, but the spots were different.
So how do you find that? That's my question. If I'm going out there, I would look at the grass. It's flooded. It's 9 feet high. You're on Rayburn. There's a lot of hay grass. There's a lot of hydrilla. How do you find those bare spots?
To be honest, man, you can find a lot of them idling right now. This is obviously hindsight, and hindsight's always 20/20. Even though you were next to the bushes, it was 10 foot to 14 foot deep, and you could idle those spots, and there were guys finding those schools on grass. Terry Bolton talked about seeing that spot. I mean, it's not a coincidence that a TVA guy won that event. TVA guy won that event. You know why? Because he's got a habit of looking at that screen 24/7. So when he moves from this point to that point over there and he's idling, he's looking at a graph out of habit. Terry was, and that school of 33 pounds, he said he found idling by mistake.
All right, now for some of the people watching and listening out there, TVA, Kentucky Lake, Tennessee Valley, impoundments.
Offshore ledge fishermen.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't know what hay grass is. And could you kind of describe what the type of grass was that you were looking for these bare patches?
Okay. So
because it's January, and a lot of people
Right,
are thinking,
right.
wait a minute, grass
Right.
in January?
Hey, I wouldn't be surprised if there's guys that finished in the top 10 here that are from out of state that had not, possibly never been to Rayburn that may have never seen hay or hay grass.
Charles Sim from Ontario
could have been catching it off of hay and didn't know what hay was.
Yeah.
That is a possibility.
Yeah.
So Sam Rayburn has a lot of what they call hay grass. It looks like hay. That's why they call it hay. It's a long brown straw grass. It grows very tall. I'd say it grows 8 to 9 feet. Normally, when the water's at normal pool, you have hydrilla, and then you have a bare spot or hydrilla all the way up to the hay. So the hay sits inside before the bank. Does that make sense?
and you can see all this visually.
Yes.
You can look and say there's hay grass sticking out of the water.
Oh, yeah.
And you can see the hydrilla coming up, topped out. And
Yeah, and you can see aerial pictures of it. I mean, if you look at aerial pictures of Rayburn at normal pool, you can see the hay, and the hay lines the majority of the lake, and it grows at a certain depth. And I don't know exactly what that would be at normal pool, but let's say 5 foot to 8 foot or 5 foot to 10 foot is the hay, and then it'll make a very hard line. And then the hay stops, and then either you'll have a bare spot in hydrilla or you'll just have hay to hydrilla growing right to it. And it was those bare spots in between that were big players this week.
so they're using that as an ambush point then, or they're more comfortable there, or what?
They're just sitting down in that hole. I mean, it's like you build a wall, and this is hydrilla, and the phone is hay, and they just sit right in the corner of that wall and waiting for bait to come over. It's
So
an
then a
ambush point.
crankbait comes past, a swim bait comes past, a swim
Absolutely.
jig comes past, and one of them will dart up, and then it kind of gets a competition thing going, and
Right.
that's why you saw Chad Warren with the Neko or Nico rig, depending on what continent you live on. That's why you saw those guys make the same cast over and over, and basically they're, for lack of a better term, catching fish out of a barrel.
Yeah. And I've got a picture on my phone. Maybe we could get that up later on. Somehow we could do that. But you could idle and see those fish because of the fact that they were on that hard bottom. So you would be idling. It'd be grass. I'm talking about looking at your graph. Grass, and then the grass just stops, and you hit that hard spot, and then boom, it would light up, and there those fish would be in a group.
So what would you do different, Bradley?
What would I do different? This event, obviously I've had some time to think about it, and like I say, 2020 is always hindsight and it's the best, but my biggest problem that I had personally with this event is that I was on nothing going into tournament day. I literally was in practice mode first 10 minutes of the morning of day one. This was not an event to be in that mode. This was an event where if you had a group here and a group here, because these groups were not pull up there and let's catch 12 pounds and we'll go over here and maybe cull one. These groups were the right ones, and so you pulled up, you threw in there, you would catch them cast after cast, and if it was some of the better groups, you could catch 17 to 25 pounds in one spot, and that allows you to put that in the boat and then spend the rest of the day looking for tomorrow, right? And a lot of the guys that did really well had 1 to 2 or 3 or 4 of those spots before the tournament even began, and I knew they existed just through my group of guys that I share information with. I knew they existed. I knew what I was looking for, but I was unable to find it, and I did find a couple of groups of fish that were a little deeper offshore, and they were multiple casts over and over and over. I think I caught, my marshal was keeping track on the iPad the first day. I think I caught 52 keepers the first day.
Wow.
But, I never caught a fish over 3.25. A lot of small fish mixed in. It was an event where those guys that had those spots next to the grass before the event started definitely had a leg up. Now, I'm not saying there weren't guys that didn't go out there and didn't have a clue and hit one of those,
right?
Because that also could get you there really quick. But I continued to look for one of those spots for 2 days and never found it.
How often does that happen to you in an event where you're really not dialed in and you end up on day one practicing, for lack of a better term?
Yeah.
Not that often?
No, it happens more often than you like. There are some situations when you like it. You like it when fish are scattered and it's kind of one fish here, one fish there. It kind of allows you to stay open-minded. those are some of the events that have turned into better events where, like, you go into it and you're thinking, man, I don't have a clue. I'm not going to catch them this week. And you know, you just go put the trolling motor down. You've got 20 different rods on the deck. And at the end of the day, you catch them pretty good. And you continue to catch them through the event. But I'd say that it happens, you know, probably half the time that you're not satisfied with what you found, for sure.
All right. Did you watch any of the live coverage?
I did.
What were your thoughts? I mean, when you watch that as a competitor, as a professional, what are you thinking? Man, I screwed up. I just totally missed it. Or
no,
were you on it and then
just didn't find it? Right.
Exactly.
I didn't find that needle in the haystack. I've done this for so long, Mark, and I've traveled from coast to coast. There's not many times that I turn on live at this point in my life and I'm surprised or shocked. You know, the DT crankbaits that Bolton was throwing, I mean, that's no surprise in the wintertime. I mean, that's a bait in the grass. I mean, on the Classic, I mean, it's baits that I've caught good bags on before in my life. None of that was surprising to me. I mean, the baits and the techniques that they're using are the same things that were on the deck of my boat. The things that probably surprised me a little bit more, I wouldn't say in live because then I had figured it out, but the fish were a lot closer to the old shoreline, meaning like the bushes and stuff, than what I really kind of in my head was envisioning during practice. I was too far out, and I do believe that's why I had the problems with the two schools of fish that I did find in the tournament. Ended up being smaller fish and not having bigger fish. They were just a little bit further. They were on the outside edge of the grass, and there was no grass out there. They had lots of fish on them, but not the quality.
One of the big changes for this year in FLW was the Marshall program.
Absolutely.
No co-anglers. And I was watching live, and I couldn't help but notice, to me it seemed like you had these guys that had one or two spots. You said they're about the size of the studio, you know, not very big, but a couple casts wide. These guys were able to sit on it. They're able to not make casts. They're able to catch as many as they wanted to. They didn't have that co-angler behind them catching fish out of that school too. Some tournaments, I don't think it makes that big of a difference if there's a guy behind you. Was this a tournament where you noticed a definite, I guess, advantage, or the guys who, you know, didn't have to worry about their marshal making a cast and catching those fish in the school could really manage their fish?
Right, yeah. It definitely made it a more relaxed situation to where, you know, with today with spot lock and everything else, I mean, there was a there was a cast on every one of those spots, you know, and it was the angle, and it took a little while to kind of get around on that because you'd pull up on one of those and you'd fire out there, and like, for example, you'd graft it, and I did, and there's, I mean, literally 500 fish down there. I mean, that's how many would be on the graph. And you would make a couple of casts across and not get a bite. And you'd be like, I'm tracking this thing by 200 fish and nobody's bit. But it is about kind of that angle, and it's also about getting that first one to fire. And then once you kind of get them ignited, then they kind of go, and then they may simmer down if you don't really have the right angle. And then you'll tick a piece of grass, or you'll tick a little hard spot there that's a little different, and then you'll get a bite. That's the spot, you know, that's the cast that you're really looking for. And with the Marshall program now, it just really allows guys to, you know, spot lock, sit down, you know, do their tackle, cull, take their time, and really it allows the school to kind of, you know, because it's not just cast, because if you catch one and you're culling, it actually gives them just a little bit of time to rest where they're not just looking at a bait the entire time.
All right, Corey in Tennessee wants to know, did anybody do well, at least in the top 10, fishing shallow that you know of?
No. Shallow is a relative term because, I mean, there were some guys that probably caught a fish or two flipping bushes. I know Chad Grigsby was talking to me, and he told me he flipped a couple. And
James Niggemeyer has it on his YouTube channel.
James definitely flipped the entire event.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything from John Cox, but guaranteed he went somewhere, you know, in the woods. But now shallow being that those bushes and trees were 8 foot deep.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
You watch Niggemeyer on his YouTube channel, he will flip to a tree and then he will peel a line off of his reel 3 or 4 times. So he's given that bait to get down there, and then he'll reel in, and then he'll drop the hammer.
That's right.
All right. So. All right. As far as when you're watching live, you know, you said earlier there wasn't really anything that surprises me or any, but at the same time, what did you learn? Was there anything that you kind of picked up on, like, wow, Not that you were lost or not that you didn't know what was going on. This was kind of a unique tournament because it was very defined on what the top guys were doing.
It was amazed how well those fish hid. Like I said, if you missed them by 5 feet, that spot that Bolton caught the 33 pounds off of, I know for a fact that's in Harvey Creek, and I spent a lot of time around that 200-yard football field that he's in. I mean, a tremendous amount.
So how close did you get? In your opinion, I mean, obviously you don't know exactly, but I mean, were you within 50 feet of it, 100 yards of it?
No, I was probably within a quarter of a mile of actually making a cast of it. I bet I idled within, looking on a graph, I probably idled within 100 yards of it and never saw them.
And what, you're just seeing grass, and you're like, no bare spots here, so you just keep going, and you just didn't happen to dissect it.
Right, or a cast doesn't go somewhere, but there's always some fish in that general vicinity, and that school of fish had to be somewhere. But here's to the same point. I was talking to Dickie Newberry after the event was over, and we were talking about the spot. That was the day that he'd caught the 33 pounds, and he said, man, crazy thing. He said, where he caught that 33 pounds, he said, just yesterday on day one, he said, Castledine was on this side and I was on this side, and he said we were talking and we were both throwing on that point in that same area. It never had a bite. So it's not that they weren't there. I'm telling you, man, if you didn't hit the spot with the right cast to know, to get that one bite, to know, hey, they're there, or to make them fire. One of my friends had a spot that he knew that they were there. He'd found in practice. He saw them on the graph. He'd caught a few in practice. He pulls up to it in the tournament. He throws in, I think it was Kurt Dove, so it was. He throws in there with his Carolina rig, drag, fires in their rig, drag. They don't bite. And he's like, man, I know they're here. And so he reaches down, picks up the spinner bait, throws it up there, lets it go to the bottom, hits it, and just like, and he caught 8 in a row.
Wow.
I want to ask a Jeffrey's question. So you said Newberry and Castledine were there. You were within 100 yards of it. Terry Bolden rolls up. It says he found those fish just kind of idle, wasn't even playing. How much of that is luck, and how much of that is Terry Bolden being an offshore TVA guy doing the right thing there? Jeffries loves to ask the luck question.
That is Terry Bolton watching his graph from habit, and being a TVA guy, he saw that school of fish. Absolutely. I mean, that's 110% work put in.
You know how tough it is to win one of these things. You've got 2 under your belt. One of the things Jeffries and I talked about yesterday, we were surprised that he had been on tour for as long as he had and had not won an FLW Tour event. I
was super pulling for that guy. 110%.
That was kind of my question. Do the veterans pull for the other veterans when in a situation like that?
Yep. And I'm friends with Nick. I've competed against Nick. I mean, you guys know how I am. I fish a lot, locally and regionally also. And so I've seen LeBron coming. I've competed against him for quite a few years. Not LeBron. He loves to call him LeBron. Yeah, Nick, if you're watching, there's actually a couple of guys calling you LeBron, which is probably not a bad thing, but that kid's got it. He's coming. He is a very hard worker.
I mean, you look at his stats, and from the Forest Wood Cup, is he, in your opinion, as an angler, he's everything he's cracked up to be?
Yeah, and he has the work ethic to go with it.
Cool. All right, TJ from North Carolina wants to know, if you find grass on your graph, do you have to see that grass? In other words, do you have to actually physically touch or see to make sure that's the right grass?
Man, I'm going to be real honest. With this new stuff that we've got from Garmin, can we get into this for a second?
I've heard about everything that he's talked about it and all that and everything.
Yeah,
is that too much?
Yeah.
Are we at the point where it's too much?
No, we never have too much. Never have too much. Live scope's incredible. So what it's allowing us to do is we're to the grass question on a graph. We're idling over it. We're seeing it. Some of the things that we're looking for are the height of the grass. Is it up in just a solid carpet where it's like this table? It's just the same height grown with no holes in it, or is it peaks and valleys? That looks more like the Rocky Mountains, which kind of ended up being the deal at Amistad. That was the type of grass we were looking for. That type of stuff you can see on a graph, and then once we get to, like at Rayburn, the bare spots, and we're dropping a trolling motor, then you're just trying to stay on the edges, and that's where the live scope came in, because I can literally look in front of me 100 feet and know that the grass is to my left, the grass is to my right, and as I spin to the middle, I see the bare spot, and then I see the edge of the grass 40 yards up there, or 40 feet up there. It allows me to make a cast. I'm hung in the grass first pull or two, and then bare bank, and then bite.
All right, gotcha.
What you don't understand, Mark, is, we've hung out a lot more recently in the past year than we did before, but we've known each other for a long time. Fish around, and I've always, I mean, for lack of a better term, you were a stick your rod in the water to see how deep it is type of guy.
Yeah. Yep.
And over the last 2 years, you've invested a lot of your own money and time in technology, in linking units to iPads, to mapping, to chips, to Google Earth, to computers, to study, to past results. I mean, this is kind of new for you on the technology front. But I got to witness it since we roomed together at Amistad, as far as the hours you spend off the water with your mapping on your iPad and sitting out there and looking at your graph. Just kind of talk about why, after being so successful for 20 years, you decided to go full on into the technology. Matt Herron talked about it yesterday. He said, I'm 56 and I'm trying to stay relevant by keeping up with this. And there's a lot of guys who are my age who aren't relevant. Was it a deal where you felt like you had to, or you finally saw the advantages, or you just decided it was time that you spend the time, or what's the deal with that?
So, when I started fishing, competing locally at home, the biggest leg up you could get was time on the water. There was no substitute for it, and there's still no substitute for it today. But the thing that we see is we see a lot of these young fishermen that come in and do so well, right? They accomplish lots of things without, they're missing that big piece, which is time on the water. The thing that's allowing them to do that is technology. There's no question about it. It's the internet. It's shows like this. There's so many places to get information, and technology is where the advantages are in 2019 and going forward in the sport of bass fishing. That's where it is. There's no doubt.
All right, Stephen G. from Oklahoma wants to know, aside from the lake level, was there any similarities in the way that the grass fished at Amistad compared to Rayburn?
There really wasn't, and that was probably another little bit of hang up I had early on in practice at Rayburn, was because I just rolled from one. So, just naturally you kind of want to fish and have some of the same similarities. The biggest similarity that it had, which probably kind of drew me in the beginning, was the depth of it. The depth of the grass at Hydrilla at Amistad obviously is deep because the water's so clear. It allows it to grow so deep. I mean, we had 20, 25 foot outside grass lines at Amistad, and the grass didn't start growing until 10. Does that sound right? I've kind of forgotten. What was the inside grass line at Amistad?
I forgot to. It was about 8 foot.
But Rayburn, so that was a similarity that they did have. The problem was the way that they related to it. For me personally, and the guys that I run with, was different. They were related to the grass at Amistad. The grass fish at Rayburn, they were related, but they weren't in it. They were on the hard spot. So literally we were catching them off of the grass. Another major difference though between the two is one, we could throw an A-rig and one we couldn't. If you let us throw an A-rig at Rayburn, you talking about getting stupid.
100 pounds?
Oh yeah. And over the grass probably.
Wow. What was the water temps?
52 to 55 ballpark, right around in there. It was really a warm, nice, beautiful week for the month of January. I mean, we couldn't have gotten more lucky. When I saw that on the schedule, I know Castledine and Cecil real well, and we'd talked about it, and the odds of an ice storm or just, terrible fishing weather was very possible. And the week comes, and there was the forecast, and it was, 50s and 60s, and a couple of days it touched 70, and it was light winds every day. The lake level is so high. There's a bridge up there that they call the 147, Highway 147. And it's a tall bridge. I mean, normally. It's not tall right now because the lake is so high. If the wind was to blow 15, 20,
which it does a lot.
Yeah, quite often in January out of the north.
Yeah.
It would be touch and go trying to go underneath that. I mean, it would be a timing deal. I mean, it'd be dangerous. It really would.
So they postponed one day, and I know there was a lot of discussion.
Yep.
Some people said, they should have fished that day. What are your thoughts on that, Bradley?
I think that we're into a new era of fishing. we discussed this just a little bit earlier before we got on the air. I fished 3 events. The last 3 events I fished was the U.S. Open, the Costa down at Amistad, and now the first tour event at Rayburn. The 3 things that they all have in common is we have had a cancellation day on all 3. Since we lost Nick at Okeechobee, I think things in this sport have changed. I know that there are some naysayers and people that complain, and it's hard to make that call at 4:30 in the morning and know what the weather's really going to look like at 10 a.m. And sometimes it is nice and pretty. But at the end of the day, my personal opinion is that fishing is still just fishing. And, these are people's fathers, people's sons, people's husbands, and to lose one is not worth a day of fishing. The one thing that I really liked what FLW did, especially for this being a tour level event, I've been a big proponent of this for a long time, and it's really one of the first ones that I've seen. I think Bass may have done it once, but for the most part, you have a cancellation day, it's a canceled day, and it's lost. We're competing in 4-day events. I've always felt like postpone it and then go to the next day.
Right.
And I applaud FLW 100% for doing that, to go to Monday.
Matt and I talked about it. A Monday live segment is unbelievable. I mean, the amount of exposure that you guys get from a Monday final day, because everybody's at work. The people that are interested, they're watching at work. They're watching on their phones. I wouldn't mind having the final day on Monday from this point forward.
As an employer, I wouldn't want it on Monday if I had a bunch of fishermen working for me.
A lot of lost productivity there.
Yeah. But absolutely, I thought of that, and I'm sure that FLW thought of that. It's a great time to have a live product on the internet in 2019 is on a Monday. Anytime during the week, but a Monday is a great day to do it.
Yeah. All right. Tyler from College Station wants to know, is there any way you can describe what these bare spots were in the grass? Were they pretty small? Were they large? What can you tell him about them?
I think they differed. Some of them were large, whether they be clay points or gravel or rock, and be small spots. I think some of the guys probably found some spots that were size of this table. A lot of them were bigger areas, but the fish would be in one corner of it. You know what I mean? So if it was a football field of a hard clay area, they weren't out in the middle of it roaming,
right?
Or together out in the middle of it. Dude, they were up against the edge of the grass, right where the grass stopped. Coming into that bare spot and be grouped up.
How many? How big Rayburn is? How difficult it was to find it. Terry Bolden found some, Thrift found some, Chad Warren found some, all the guys at the top. How many 30-pound spots, bare spots in the grass, do you think existed on the lake that never got touched, that are out there? How many gold mine holes?
Tons.
It wasn't like they found all the productive. Were there hundreds of schools with 3 to 7 to 8 pounders out there that never even got touched?
There's probably 3 times as many that never got found that were found. just for the simple fact of, 1, how big Rayburn is, and 2, how many fish live there. That place is hands down. Well, what's a better lake than Sam Rayburn right now?
Yeah.
Name it. There's not one, is there?
No.
You got to go to St. Clair to get smallmouth that big.
It's got to be frustrating, though,
to
know that it's out there. Because sometimes you fish a tournament and you're like, they're just not biting. But this one, to know that if you found it, you were 5 casts away from 25 pounds?
Yeah, and that's the upbeat thing that keeps you going when you have bad practices in a place like that. Or even if you have a bad first day, because, if you catch 9 pounds the first day, it's nothing, because 30 pounds exists out there. Right, like Mansour, he's a great example. Those type of events I really enjoy fishing, because there's the room to just catch them really good the entire event and have a great week, or there's room to come back, or there's lots of options there.
It's weird, David Dudley goes 24-3 and then 9-1, and then right below him Jeremy Lawyer goes 11-11 and then 24-13. Kyle Coriona goes 13 and then 23. Troy Morrow goes 22 and then 8.
Some of the weird things about some of those schools too was that even the guys that were catching big bags, there was still a lot of small fish mixed in, so it wouldn't all just be 5-pounder, 4-pounder, 6-pounder, 7-pounder. It would be 13-inch Kentucky, 2-pounder, 1.5-pound largemouth, 13-inch Kentucky, 7-pound largemouth. That's the order that they would come in.
That's odd.
And then it was odd, but that's how those groups were. They were grouped together: spotted bass, largemouth, small and large.
What did you say the water temps were? Somebody wanted to know.
52, 55.
Okay, during the week. Pretty stable.
It was real stable.
Yeah. Maynard wants to know, what do you think about having a day off?
I am crazy about the day off.
Yeah.
Now, I'm 44 years old. If I was 22, I might not like it as much. I don't know. But that's one of the biggest things that I've enjoyed at FLW is the day off. It probably allows us to spend too much time jacking with tackle. Honestly, we probably get to, because I think back to when I Elite Series days, and I'm like, how in the world did I ever get that done?
I'm not kidding, Mark. The more time I spend around Brad, the more I realize that the checks are cashed and tournaments are not won on the water.
Yeah.
They're won. I mean, it's not get up, go fishing, get done, go to dinner. You're talking another 8 hours, even when you're dialed in and stuff, between the map study and the tackle and working on the boat and getting everything. When he's at a tournament, his tournament is that week. Yeah. It is not when he's on the water. It is not during the tournament.
Well, that's his job. Week. That's your job, and you got to do everything you can.
What you understand is it's all the way till late at night. You live that tournament, I've noticed.
I think most of the guys are that way for the most part. I mean, we've got a lot invested, and we're trying to get as much as we possibly can back out of it. And then you do what I did last week. So I had some Oklahoma math at Rayburn, and then we'll get on with my 11 pounds a day story. But I had searched all day long for a group of those fish, and I pulled up on a spot about 1 o'clock, and I idled across it, and the graph just lit up, and there was a ton of fish there. And so I turn around and I catch a couple, and by the third cast, I've caught one in a row. I'm like, okay, I'm doing it 340. I'm closing the doors here, right? I'm staying here until closing time. And so I start doing the math of where I am. I get on my graph, and I zoom out. I'm 16 miles from takeoff. And I'm like, all right, doing it 340. I need to leave here, so I'm looking for the last possible minute that I can stay. And I do the math off of 345. And I don't know if it's because of all the years of fishing BFLs, Costas, and everything's on 15-minute intervals. But this event right here, they changed, and we went to 20-minute interval flights. And so there wasn't 345. And so in my mind, I'm thinking I'm leaving at 3:30, and that's giving me 15 minutes to run 16 miles. My boat's running 73.2 mile an hour right now, loaded. I'm going to get there, right? I'm fishing. And my marshal says, man, you're due back at 3:40. And I look down at the clock, and it just blares at me, and it's 3:27. I'm like, you got 13 minutes to run 16 miles. What have you done? And I'd sit on that school and kill them. I hadn't caught anything in the last half hour. And so I fired up, and I go as fast as it'll go all the way down the lake, and I'm 2 minutes late, and which is a 2-pound penalty. And I weigh in, I had 13 pounds, and I'm thinking, well, that could eventually hurt you. So, but I need to catch them good second day. Second day, I don't catch them that good. I catch 11 something, and so 11.9. So I ended up with
22.9.
22.9, which was 85th place.
It took 24.5 to get paid.
So 24.9 puts me in 60th place with $9,000. So that was $4,500 a minute that mistake cost me. And along with the points of starting the year off in 85th, little hole to dig out of. But got to think of the positive of it. I've fished a lot of tournaments in my life. It's the first time I've ever done that and come in late. It was a painful mistake, no doubt. But as bad as my week was, and as bad as I struggled in practice, to be fortunate enough to be where I was, I guess is good. I just don't want to make that mistake ever again.
You beat Castledine.
I had to think about my boy Terry Butcher. I don't know if y'all remember this story, but it was the same type of deal. He just got in his mind the time wrong, and it was the last event on the last day, and they were at Oneida.
Yeah.
And he sit out there with a good bag of fish right outside the takeoff, fished for an extra 10 or 15 minutes thinking that his flight time, and he came in and he was 10 or 15 minutes late, and he lost all his weight, and he was already in the cut for the Classic. All he had to do was weigh his fish, and like I say, it was the end of the season and everything, and He didn't make the Classic, which was on his home lake.
Yeah.
It was tough. So, my deal was tough, but it wasn't near as tough as his.
You got 6 to bounce back from it, make those 25 points back up.
Yeah, I think.
Pay attention to your clocks, guys.
Isn't it Crete that writes?
A lot of guys are writing it on their hand.
Yeah.
It wasn't that, even if I had written it on my hand, I don't think that it would have changed anything because I knew I was doing it 340. The problem was when I did the math in my head, subconsciously I went back to 345, and I don't know why, but I did.
340 is a weird time. I've never even heard of it.
It is kind of weird.
We're trying some new stuff with the fact that we don't have co-anglers weighing in now, so they're trying to shorten that weigh-in time. You guys have watched FLW and really the 5-hour-long weigh-ins that we've had in the past, some of them. So they're trying to shorten that, and they've gone, instead of having 15-minute flights, I don't know how many people they're putting in them, but they've added some more to a flight as far as the number of people. And I believe that they're down to 4 or 5 flights now, but they're 20-minute interval flights instead of being 15. So that was kind of an experiment for this event. I don't know exactly what they're going to do on the next one, but trying to keep bag lines down, but still keep the speed up on the time that it takes to complete weigh-in.
All right, Chad in Canada wants to know, what do you have coming up next?
My next event, I believe, will be the next FLW Tour event on the Toho chain of lakes, which is Toho, Kissimmee, Hatchinall. That's going to be an interesting deal too, because I believe that MLF kicks off their season on the same chain of lakes, and I believe they're just a week or so before us. So a lot of FLW Tour guys are going to be very interested in what's going on with MLF, their kickoff of their season for sure.
What do you think of this tour schedule? I was talking to Mark yesterday, and I said, well, we're 1 for 1, because I looked at it and I thought there's 6 fisheries. It's going to take 20 pounds a day to win. I mean, it's, with the exception of maybe Cherokee, and if you hit that during the spawn, it could be a big one.
Right.
You guys are going to have to really have good bags to be competitive.
I think everybody's pretty excited about our schedule this year. I actually heard a couple of guys that had different options, different things that they stayed because of the schedule. That's part of why we fish, and it makes it fun for everyone involved to be able to have the opportunity to catch 30. What do you have?
33.9.
Yeah. God, what a day.
29.2.
Yeah, he's so humble too. I told him, man, I said, congratulations and a great day, and he's like, man, it's better to be lucky than good any day. I'm thinking, dude, you just killed it.
Yeah, just that bag would have put him like in the top 30. If he
one day.
Yeah, just with one day.
Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy. All right, Kevin in Illinois wants to know, what are your thoughts on Kentucky Lake?
I'm sure he's talking about the Asian carp and the situation there with the fish and the population. It's I know that everyone there is trying to do a lot legislative wise, and just everybody there is trying to come up with a solution to the problem. I hate to say it, but the biggest thing that they need to figure out is how to keep it from moving on up. It's got to stop in Kentucky, and I'm sure there's probably already some in Pickwick.
Hey, Matt, Andy in Indiana wants to know, did you study any of the live commentating for your gig? Did you watch what they did?
Yeah, I'm staying away from a vest because he wore the heck out of that thing. I can't make that look any better than.
All right, here's a pointer I got for you. Okay.
Yep.
When I was watching live, they panned to Brian Thrift, and he's sitting out there and he's catching them. This was day 3, and they're talking about the lineup that I was talking about, the cast, and they're talking about the spot lock, and they're going on and on and on about it. Brian Thrift does not have an Ultrex. He has a Fortrex, which is old school trolling motor. Yeah. He's having to do 180 after he culls, and they're talking about this trolling motor for 10 minutes, and he doesn't even have one. So if you do that, Matthew, I'm going to be very disappointed.
No, I thought Hollowell did a great job, though.
They did a great job.
Are you just doing the grand event?
Just doing the grand event.
Okay.
Just gonna ease in there and do the grand event, and
the good thing about the grand event is there should not be a spot that has bad cell service for that event. Unless somebody's way up the river.
It's going to be hectic because I've got the Costa that next Thursday that starts on Kentucky Lake. So I'll be in studio, so I'll have to tow my boat there, do the live, get in Friday. I guess they probably have I don't know. I have no idea how that works to get ready for it. But then do that Saturday, Sunday, then practice Monday, Tuesday, part of Wednesday, then fish Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Then I come back for a week. Then I've got the Bass Nation Regional on Gunnersville, then another Costa on some other lake. Not Lake of the Ozarks. What's the Table Rock?
Yeah.
So it'll be busy, but I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it's gotten to the point now where the FLW Live is in its third year now.
Yep.
And it's gotten to the point now where a lot of these guys are now on 2, 3, 4 times. We saw that with Bass, with kind of the evolution of the guys going, get that camera out of my face, I want to fish.
Right.
And then there's kind of that thing that clicks in their head that goes, okay, I can still fish, I can still be productive, and I can still showcase my sponsors and gain a fan base, and they see the benefit of having that camera in live.
Right.
And I think you're starting to see that on FLW too now from, just the butt shot of those guys with their head down, don't bother me, to now, what Chad Warren was doing, and then what Bolton and what Thrift does now is kind of talk about it. You've been on live a lot. Did you kind of go through that evolution too, where you went from, I can't let this be a distraction, to, okay, I'm going to make the best of this and work it into my day?
Yeah, it's a hard thing to get used to. I told Rob Newell one time that he was like, man, when you open that tackle box, I'm like, it's like you've opened your wife's underwear drawer and like the whole world camera's in it. I mean, I don't want them in there, I think we all have a little bit of that in us just because of, the fishermen, and, it's not that we really have anything secret in there, but it seems like we might, But the comfort level of that does change, I'm sure, for guys like Brian Thrift, and kind of get used to them being in your boat all the time.
All right, very cool stuff, man. We appreciate you pitch hitting today. You're welcome anytime, Bradley. You know that. And hopefully people got a little bit more insight on what went down at Sam Rayburn, a very different Sam Rayburn than in previous years, especially early. So best of luck to you, man. Matthew, tomorrow, who do we have?
Carl Jacobson. Back on the Elite Series.
Jacobson or Jacobson?
It's however you want to say it. LeBron.
LeBron.
He'll be driving. He's headed down to Florida.
All right.
We'll have him. I mean, he's been around now. He's an established pro. So it'll be interesting to see what he says about returning to the Elite Series.
All right, man. 8:30 a.m. Central Time once again tomorrow. Right here coming at you. Everybody be safe. We will talk to you on Wednesday.